Evening. Tonight we're going to talk about preparing your pictures for PDI or printing. I'm going to take a single photo here, so we're not going to really discuss any of the other alterations. It's just basically once you've got the photo the way you want it, how do you want to present it for a PDI or print competition. The first thing we're going to cover is the crop tool. Now, if I just click here, you've got the crop tool, or you press C. It defaults to the size of the image itself, and you can just purely pull it around and center it the way you wish to use the photo itself. So in this case, we could just do a letterbox style if we wish to, and hit apply. Now I'll undo that. I'll just pull this back in my history. Now the way you probably want to do it is pick an actual aspect ratio. So under the mode here, if you click down, you can choose between different aspect ratios. So typically I go for A3 because most of my print borders are A3 or A4. It will do both because it's the same ratio. And if I click on that, the photo's already that size. But now, if I move it, I can't change. It's always going to stay in a ratio. So I can then position it where I want to put the photo itself. Okay. And once I've got what I want, I can click apply. Now, you can, if you wish, do specific ratios. So again, click on the crop tool. At the moment, it's unconstrained. What I can do is do custom. And what I could do is, well, the ratio for the overhead projector is 1400 by 1050. And I can put those two values in, hit the custom button again, and come down and say add. And I could add that as, for instance, PDI ratio, and hit OK. So now when I come down to this level here, I've now got PDI ratio. And you can see that at that ratio, it's thinner, less width than an A3 sheet, and I could crop that accordingly. That's a nice way of seeing the image on the screen and get an idea of filling the overhead projector screen as we go along. Now, what we can do, I'll undo that again. That's not the only way you can do it. The other way is not do anything at this stage. So there's the print picture in the ratio I want it. But what I want to do now is save this out as a JPEG so I can send it to Lou for projection. So what I would do in this case is press File, Export, and pick JPEG. Down here you've got the size. Now, basically this picture's not the right ratio. So what I will do is I'll put in 1400 for the width. And as I click into the height, it's changed it to 990. So basically, when that's projected, it will be projected at that ratio, but the height won't be the full height of the projector, but the ratio will be correct. So that's great. If you unlock it and change the value, you'll actually stretch or pinch the photo, which you definitely don't want to do. You want to make sure that the quality is at 100% for projection. And down here, it gives you an idea of the file size. It will be, the file it will generate will be a 1.76 megabyte JPEG. Now, why would you want to ever reduce quality? Well, you might if you wanted to upload an image to WhatsApp or some other mobile device. You might prefer to drop the quality because the picture will be pretty small, and it will greatly reduce the size of the file, which means that on a mobile device, for instance, it will display almost immediately. Whereas if you left it at 100%, it may take a couple of seconds to download, depending on your connection. The only other thing you really need to worry about is if you hit the More button, you want to pick your ICC profile. And in that list, you will find sRGB. It's usually down the bottom, because that's the format that the projector projects in. So if you don't pick that, the chances are that some of the colors may not come out as expected. So you'll get a slightly different color cast to your image when it's projected. It might not come across as well as it could do. So we'll close that, and you're basically ready to go. You can now export that photo and then just pick a folder you want to put that in and give it a name. It will default to the name of the either the original photo itself, which might be some random number, or if you've already saved the Affinity photo file, it will give it the same name, which is what's happened in this case. So it's called it Albert Bridge. So we'll just hit save. So if I do file, export again, if I just hit export, you'll see the file's been saved, and there it is. So you can see its dimensions are 1400 by 990, and its file size is 1.76 megabytes, and that's ready to be uploaded to the club. Okay, so borders. Sometimes, particularly, well, it can be in both cases, but particularly PDI, sometimes if you've got some dark areas near the edges, it can be hard to see where the photo stops and just blank screen space exists, and it can give it a little bit of an odd look. And you've probably quite often heard judges say this could do with a small border. And that's what we're going to look at now. Now, there's two ways of doing it. You can either basically put a border inside the photo at its current size, or you can expand the canvas to get a border. So we'll do that first. And what you can do is go into Documents and say Resize the canvas. Now what you must do is do it from the center, so it expands the canvas outwards from your photo. Here's the size of our photo, and what I'll do is I'll make it a little bit bigger than normal. So I'm going to add 200 pixels. So I could either do that by changing the number, or what you can actually do is just do plus 200. Now, if I move over there, that's actually changed that's the width, that's changed the height, but it's done it as a ratio, so it won't have done it as 200. You might actually want to do that. So what I'll do is I'll cancel that, and I'll do it again. Canvas, pick the anchor point at the center. We're going to unlock it so that we don't have a ratio, and I'm going to add 200 to each side. So in essence, I'm going to get 100 pixels per side because I'm adding 200 from the center. And resize that. So now we've got a border around the side, but if you have a look, it's basically alpha. It's got no color, no image at all there. So what we want to do is add a background to it. So if I go to layer and add a new fill layer, that's put just a white piece of paper, shall we say, straight over the top. Now it's obviously sitting on top of the photo, so what I need to do is drag that in the layers underneath the photo. There we go. That's white, that's very nice. But I might want to change the color of it. Now pick the fill layer. I can just change the color. So I can move around and change the color of the border, which is very nice. But what if you actually want to pick a color from the photo itself? Well, what you can do, if I just zoom up a little bit, with this little dropper, and this is on the color tab, pick the dropper, just hold it down, drag it across, and you can pick a color from the photo. You can actually pick a color from anything. So if you wanted to pick a color from a different photo or something on your desktop, that's exactly what you can do. Okay, but we'll pick from the photo. So I quite like that lighter gold type color. Just release, and you'll see the color has been put in the swatch there. So if I zoom out, if I click on that, it will change the color to that type of gold color there. So it's a complementary color to your photo. Once you've got that, you can do things like effects. So I could add an outer shadow, let's say. So if I zoom up on a corner, and if I can shadow the edge to just give a little bit of an effect to the, oh sorry, I've got Gaussian blur on, outer shadow, sorry. So yeah, I can increase the radius, offset, and intensity, and I can give like a 3D shadow effect to the photo. Now you can actually change, at the moment you can see that that's at 315 degrees. So it's like the light is shining from top left. And if I move over to this corner, you can see the shadow is underneath. And what I can do is I can change that if I wish and move it around to wherever I prefer the shadow to lie. So it can give a little bit of depth to your photo. Another good one would be a bezel emboss. And again, you can see the effect there, or 3D, and it gives it actually like a button type effect. It's almost like, say for instance, if you were mounting it on those canvas mounts. So it can just give it that little bit of extra feel to the photo. So that's the radius, and then you can increase that and adjust it accordingly. So that's quite nice. Turn those off for the moment. Close. Right. Now the only problem with adding a set value all the way around means that this, although it was A3 to begin with, it's not actually A3 anymore because we've changed the ratio. So if I go down to A3, you can see that it's, if I actually went to print this, you'd clip a bit off the top or off the bottom because it's not a ratio anymore. So another way of doing it, if I just reduce it, so that would be fine for PDI. If I cancel and just get rid of all my changes, I'll go back to here. So if I've got it at the ratio I want. But what I can do now is instead of having the border go outside the picture, I can bring it in slightly, and that way the ratio stays the same. One way of doing this is just use the rectangle tool. When you move to the center, you can see the green and red line come up, and that's basically saying that's the center of the photo. Now it's important you have the snap tool turned on. That's how it finds it, is snapping to the center. You can snap to an edge as well. So we'll go back to the center, find the center. Now, if I pull the square out, you can see it's just pulling it by the top corner to bottom corner. If I hold the control key down, it actually does it about the center, which is really nice because it means I can come down to here and I know that it's going to be uniform around the edge. And it can be any size, so I can make it a letterbox if I want, but we'll come down to the bottom corner and just release the mouse button before you take your finger off the control. So now we've got this piece of paper sitting over the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it, and if I drag it down, and you see if I put it next to the photo, it acts like a mask, and it's masking out the image, the square itself. This leaves you again with an alpha edge. So I can do exactly the same again. I can just say layer, new fill layer, drag it underneath everything, and again I've got my border, but this time the photo is still in an aspect ratio for A3. But it does mean that I've chopped a little bit off the photo, but if you've taken that into account in the first place, that's fine. And of course you can do exactly the same thing. Now let's talk about printing. Generally speaking, depends what printer you've got to how the quality of the print comes out. I use a external company, SimLabs, which I know a number of you use, and they're pretty good. But if you're using your own printer, you might need to make some adjustments. And what we can do is actually soft proof this photograph. Now, if you want to do it properly, really you should get, you can buy a device that will measure the brightness of your screen and measure the color ranges within your screen and tell you how to adjust it, and you adjust it until it's right. The idea behind that is that you're trying to get what you see on the screen and what you see on the printer be as identical as possible. That can take a little bit of work, but there are members who do that, who do their own printing. But this is a little helpful tool. The first thing would be, I generally find that whatever I see on my screen will come out too dark when I get it printed by SimLabs. So what I do is I just add an adjustment layer above, and I just increase the exposure by half a stop. And that way, I basically make it a little bit brighter so that when it gets printed, it's more likely to match what I see on the screen. Sometimes I use one stop as well. So, you know, you can make that adjustment, or you could just do a manual adjustment if you wanted to. That's one way of doing it. I'll delete that. Another way of doing it is the software comes with what's called soft proofing. And the idea there, if I run it, what you can do is you get a list of all the devices. I've got a Canon printer. It's not a very good one. It's more of an office printer, not really meant for high quality printing. But I can say, okay, if I was to print that photo, this is what it would look like, which is basically on my Canon using matte photo paper. If I use gloss, it would look like that. And the idea is that this gives you an idea of what it would look like if it was printed. And you've also got a button down here called gamut check. And if I click on that, basically what it's saying is these gray areas won't print properly because of the color range of the printer and the ability of the printer. So once you've done that, what that can help you do is make adjustments. So if I make sure soft proofing is always the top layer, otherwise it's not applying it to the entire photo, and make sure that when you make any adjustments, make sure it's underneath the soft proofing. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a curves layer, basically, curves adjustment. And what I can do is these really dark areas, the curves adjustment is from white to black. I'm going to move the black point up a little bit until those grey areas start to disappear. And that means that I should get a better print, and it shouldn't just all appear as one colour there on the physical print. And what I can do is I could give it a little bit more pop, or I could bring it down in the middle, and I could adjust the white area as well. So I can bring that either one way or the other. Okay, and just generally adjust it until I think that's what I want from my printer. Okay, now the important thing is before you print it, actually turn off the soft proofing. Otherwise, that's going to go into the photo as well. So what we've done is use that to get the right colors and shades, turn it off, and that adjustment curve is making up the difference. It could be a curve, could be any of the adjustments to use. So you could use vibrance, brightness, balance and levels to make those changes. Interesting thing with the curves, we're just doing it with one color here. You can change, say, okay, I'll just look at the reds in the photo, and I'll just adjust those separately. So you can make, turn the soft proofing on. I can make those adjustments and make individual colors a little bit more vibrant. There we go. So that's reds. And if I pick greens, I can do the same thing. I can adjust that separately. Okay, and the same thing. I can move those colors up and down. Okay, so if you do your own printing, please try out the soft proof tool to better match what you see on the screen to what you get on your printer. If not, and you say use someone like SimLab, if you feel your photos are coming out a little bit dark, just try adjusting the exposure by half a stop of light, and send that off and see if you get a better photo come back. But that's it's half a stop for me, but that's my computer with my screen. Everybody's will be slightly different, so don't just go off and Simon said half a stop, that will do it. It might not. Okay. Another thing we have to think about is when cropping photos is what quality are we actually going to achieve when we print or project at a certain size. We need to really look at the DPI, the dots per inch. Now, a good way of doing this is to actually copy the photo into a predefined paper size. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll just use the crop tool here, and we're going to pretend I'm only interested in this part of the bridge for whatever reason, and I'll apply that. Okay, so now how do I know what that's going to come out like? What I can do is create a new picture, and what I'm interested in is the size. So I want to print this at A3. I want to see what this looks at A3. It will fill in the details. I want it landscape. And what I can set is the dots per inch. And basically, the more dots per inch, the more accurate the image will be, the more dense the pixels, it will look sharper. So if you think of 300 dots per inch is something that you'd look at holding in your hand up close, because it's all relative. It depends on the viewing distance. So if it's going to be a picture hanging on the wall, people generally don't walk right up to it and look at it from a couple of inches away. They'll look at it from several feet away. So 144 or the 192 will probably be perfectly adequate. And if you were going to put this on a billboard somewhere, then you can go right down to 72, because people will be standing yards away. So it's not a problem. So just for this particular example, I'm going to pretend I'm going to print it. I want to print it A3 and I want it high quality. So I'm going to pick 300 DPI. Okay. So here's our canvas here. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the original photo, my crop photo, and what I'll do is I'll merge all the visibles, so everything's in one layer, and I'll copy that. Then I'll move across to my new image and I'll paste it in. So basically, at 300 DPI, if I want 300 DPI, the picture can only be that big. Now I can make it bigger and make it fit the entire sheet, but I've now compromised the DPI, because that's no longer 300 DPI. I've made it at least twice as big, probably 3 times bigger. So it is more likely to be around 100 DPI. So when I get that printed, I can expect the quality to be lower. And if we zoom in, you can see the sharpness has gone. So what I could do then is close that one down and say, well, no, I won't print this at A3. A4 would be a better fit. So I'll start another new one. I'll make it A4 instead. Still set 300 DPI. Hit OK. And paste into that document. And you can see it's better, but it's still, I'd still have to increase the size, not 3 times, more 1.5 times maybe. And again, if I want the full width of the paper, I'd need to bring it out to this edge here, and I'd lose a little bit of the bottom of the picture. So that's probably more around about 150, 200 DPI now. So that would probably be fine for a picture on the wall. But it's something you should consider when you're cropping heavily. Will you actually lose the detail if you print too large or project too large? Okay, so what we can do is flatten that. Copy it. Create a new file. And we're going to go for A4 at 300 dpi and create a new frame. And then I can edit, paste that image in. Now this original image is too big for A4 at 300 dpi, which is fine. I've got too much detail. So what I can do is just use the move tool, grab the corner and bring the image to the right size. So I know that's going to print really well. That's probably 400-500 dpi at that level. But I can also use this to do borders. So again, if I just pick up the corner, if I hold the control key down, I can center it where I like. There we go. And I can do exactly the same thing as I've done before, which is add a new fill there, move it underneath, pick my picking color, and I'll pick something in this range here and apply it as a border. So that's another way of setting the border, but also checking your DPI at the same time. Thank you.